Good morning, my creative friends. Dr. Minette Riordan here, and this is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette, where we gather most mornings from Monday to Thursday at 7 a.m. Mountain Time to talk about all things life, love, and creativity. And I am passionate about creativity in all of its many forms. And I notice that finding the thing that moves me always felt so challenging because I thought I had to stick with one thing. But the truth is that I am a multi-passionate creative who loves working with a lot of different models, but that I find that there's key consistencies and through lines in all of the things that I am interested in. And I tell you that because tomorrow, February 22nd, is the launch of the 2023 100 Day Project. And I have decided to do 100 days of artsy animals. And so this is actually an oracle card that I drew from this gorgeously illustrated deck, the Spirit Animal Oracle, that was written by Colette Baron Reed. I can't remember who the artist is. It says in here somewhere. I think it's Jenna Della Grottalia, and I love her art is exquisite. And I always want to bring my mindfulness practices, my spiritual practices into my creativity because it just makes it all feel a little more congruent and integrated. And rather than seeing my life as completely separate, I want to be living in a space where I feel like my life is whole and all the parts are working together, which is one of the reasons that I love and am obsessed with sacred circle designs or the concept of the mandala, which in Sanskrit simply means circle. But it's intentionally always designed to hold each of the parts as well as a representation of the whole of who we are. So I'm launching into 100 days of artsy animals. Now, here's the thing, and I mentioned this yesterday as well. I've never finished a 100-day project, to be perfectly honest. And sometimes I got bored. Sometimes the projects were just way too big. Sometimes it was really poor timing, like taking on a 100-day project last year in the middle of our big move. So I wanted to do some things to prepare myself for 100 days of artsy animals. So I've already sketched some animals. I even have ideas for different things that I want to do. I even have done a couple of sample cards. And I decided if I gave it a little extra oomph to how can I make this more meaningful? And why animals? So here's the thing, I have been a lover of animals ever since I was a kid. I had a horse growing up, and we had dogs and cats and rabbits. I think I had a parakeet at one point. I had all the things. And then on my 25th birthday, my mom sent me to a psychic as a gift to have a psychic reading done, which was super, super fun. And she kept saying she saw me surrounded by animals. Well, if you were to come down to my studio with me on the other side where my actual painting studio is, there's just paintings of animals everywhere. Upstairs around my house, there's paintings of animals. I have little statues and figurines of animals. I am literally surrounded by animals. I probably have 5 decks of animal oracle cards as well. And I keep wanting to focus my art more and more, my personal art, on animals. Now, I promise I won't spend the next 100 days on this channel only working on my 100-day project with you because maybe you don't love animals as much as I do, and that might get a little bit boring. So, what I'm showing you are some of the ways that I prep for the 100-day project. So, if you decide to do one, that maybe this will give you a little inspiration. So, yesterday, we created some fun painty backgrounds, but I didn't show you. These were ones that I coffee dyed. So these are just inexpensive postcards that I bought on um, Amazon, and they have this kind of funky texture. But I made just dissolved instant coffee in hot water, a lot of coffee because I wanted these to be quite dark, and I just dipped them and soaked them and then sat them on top of a rack to dry, which created some really cool texture. I can't leave these sitting around because my silly cats keep wanting to come lick the coffee off of them. But you can see I have these just beautiful, rich backgrounds to paint over, to respond to draw on top of. These are just so interesting, right? So interesting. So there's a whole stack of coffee dyed ones that are ready to go already. And so the more that I have things begun, the easier it will be to continue and be consistent throughout the 100-day project. So that's kind of my goal, is to really create that consistency. So, good morning if you're here joining me live. Welcome. We're talking about paint and prepping backgrounds for the 100-day project. And now I have instant coffee floating around. Good morning, Judy. I'm so happy to be back with all of you. So, yesterday I played with 3 different materials and created a bunch of painty backgrounds. So, I played with alcohol inks. I was really happy with these and can't wait to do some drawings, I think, of some sea creatures over the tops of these. And I have to keep them really simple if I'm going to make it through the 100-day project. The project has to be super, super simple. So I can't create, layers and layers and spend a whole hour on every one, or I might not make it. And I definitely have some days, good morning, Blanca, where I might create 3 or 4 of these at once, because there's always going to be some days when I don't get to it, when I don't have time. We also played with some Ecoline liquid watercolors yesterday. Was really pleased with how this one came out. I think this was also acrylic inks. These were Derwent Inktense pencils through a stencil. So we played with a bunch of different materials yesterday. So here I have already this beautiful stack of materials ready to go. So I really loved these colors. And it was so funny because I was cleaning off a shelf and I found this tiger from an old velvet coloring book. Remember when we were kids and you had those velvet coloring books? And unfortunately, I think he's a little too big to use as he is on one of these cards, because that's all you see of him. But I'll probably make a photocopy of him and reduce him. Good morning, Marion. Welcome. But you can see already how to make these things come together really simply. And I was poking around on Amazon this morning and I bought a book of animal stickers, right? So some of these, excuse me, I may just stick an animal sticker on some of these fun collages. So this is less about I'm going to commit to drawing for hours a day of animals than I want to be present with my creativity throughout the next 100 days starting tomorrow. Although I've been, thinking about this and working on this project now for a few weeks already, getting organized. But I want to be just present with sort of the energy and magic of animals. I love creating them in so many different ways. And so I'm gathering this big stack of things that are already prepared and ready to go for that 100-day project. So today, what I wanted to do was to do some collage backgrounds, because collage is another fun way to just move ourselves right through a whole bunch of backgrounds. And no matter what the project is that you're working on at any given time, the idea here is to work in batches. And it's part of what I love about the 100-day project is when you're focused on one topic for a while, you got to find ways to make it fun and playful. At least I do, or I get bored. I get distracted. I want to go on to something else. So having something to respond to. So I'm going to have a whole series that have the colors we did yesterday. I have a series that are coffee dyed that I can work with. I'm less worried about what animal am I going to draw or what medium I'm going to use than how can I just get started. So this morning I have pulled just a few things that were floating around on my desk, and I thought I would just do some collage backgrounds and see where I get to, right? And I don't need a lot of collage. Again, we're just looking. And so both yesterday and today, just these were packing paper that was all attached together. But look at that fun marks and cool texture. I might try stamping with some of these too. I think I have a whole stack of them, but I thought this would make some really interesting collage materials. I haven't done anything with fabric, but I definitely want to bring some fabric into all of this as well. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to put collage down on a variety of different materials. So one of the fun things you could do with this is that if you are someone who loves art journaling and working in a journal, is to go through a blank journal and just put collage down on a variety of different pages. So the next time you sit down to work in that journal, there's some leftovers from another project, then you have things to respond to already, right? Things to respond to already. So I love music paper for sure. So I'm curious to see, it's like how many of these can I just get some collage put down on top of? And I kind of like those little circle bits because we could see what kind of interesting texture they could make. But to start, I'm just going to come in and start creating some bits and pieces of collage. I'm not trying to make them a particular size, but I just want to have some pieces ready to go. I am not too worried about shape. I'm doing all of this by hand. You notice I'm not cutting anything. And there's something very satisfying to our inner child when it comes to tearing paper. Our inner child absolutely loves tearing paper. It's actually a great anger management release as well. If there's a day when you're, just annoyed or upset with someone or about something, grab some old newspaper or an old magazine and just shred some paper. Look at these interesting old faces on this old dictionary page. We'll tear out a couple of those guys. This paper is so fragile, it breaks really easy, but I really love the colors of it, and it's similar to my coffee dyed pieces. So you notice I'm tearing this pile pretty small there, and I'll hold on to some bigger pieces as well. This is a beautiful old piece of ledger paper with someone's gorgeous handwriting on it, but I love kind of the colors and textures of this ledger paper as well. Sometimes I use a ruler if I want a little bit more of a straight edge and make it go a little bit faster. I always forget how fun it is to tear paper, and I could sit here and tear some paper for a long time, but I'm thinking we have a pretty good stack. So here's some music paper that's from an older book or a different book, and so it's got the paper is very yellow as opposed to this one, which is white. So we've got some different things happening there. And I even have one of our sacred circle designs, which I'm thinking just may get glued right onto the front of one of these note cards and become a whole background in itself. And then I can just call this one done, right, from the background perspective and start painting up from there. But I can do that later. What's missing here is some color. So when I went back to my stash, so here's some of those pieces of underpaper that you see me painting on all the time. Has some big, wonderful swashes of color, some places where, I was cleaning off paintbrushes. And sometimes I want those underpapers to be all just black and white and neutrals. But let's see what happens when we also add in some pops of color. My cat Georgia loves these big sheets of paper, and when I leave them lying on the floor, she inevitably shreds them. rolls around in them, pushes them across the floor, and I find them everywhere. I had a really nice piece of what's it called? The brown paper, like from a brown paper bag, but it was a heavyweight piece that had come in some packing with something and had left it lying on the floor and not put it away. And next thing I know, it's full of holes from where and it was in a roll, so she loved like diving into the roll. And oh my gosh, she is the silliest cat. She definitely is good at entertaining herself, though, with just about anything she could find. Okay, so we have this big, happy pile of scraps here. So I'm going to grab this note card and a couple of these postcards. And I'm going to start with a glue stick. She's doing cat art. Yes, hilarious. She is. I'm going to start with a glue stick, but I'm probably going to finish this all off with some matte medium because I'm going to be painting and drawing over the tops of these for sure. And I'm going to go right across the seam in this piece. Not right this second going to worry too much about edges. Like I said, I'll come back and finish this off with some matte medium. I'm curious what this little piece will do once we paint over the top of it. It's a thicker piece of paper there. It would also make a cool polka dot stencil. So I love reusing and repurposing things. I might need to go find another glue stick so nothing gets thrown away. And I don't need to cover the entire surface with collage. I can have, boy, that just does not want to stick. I just want to get a few bits and spots on here so that when I come back to add paint and marks and other bits and pieces, that we have some nice visual interest. And I'm having fun working on these note cards as if they're one piece. But in the interest of time, I could also just work on one surface on the cover of the note card, but it also feels kind of fun to be working on both sides of that. And this watercolor paper, it's interesting. It's very textured, which I'm not sure that I love so much. And it's not wanting to take that glue stick very well. Okay, what I'm missing in my stash here are more words, so I may grab a book here or see if I can find some book pages and get some book pages in here. So this is like all I need to get started. I think I'll repeat a little bit of the music paper over here on the other side, but you can see how quick it is to get these things going. All right, we may have to swap over to matte medium to work on these silly cards. Okay, gonna slow my process down. All right, so here I just have some simple collage bits added, and now this is ready to go for the next level. So when I can sit down, and I only have 15 minutes to do my animal of the day, I can add a little paint and add an animal and be done. And the thing about working fast like this that I want to say to you is that it forces us to stop thinking so hard about things and to really just lean into the intuitive creative play. When we overthink things, we get stalled, we tend to waste a lot of time, we sit there kind of spinning our wheels, or sometimes we don't even get started because we're like, I don't know where to get started. And so learning to work fast, to have things prepared ahead of time, are some of the tips to keep you going, whether you're working on a 100-day project or not. And if you're new to the idea of what the 100-day project is, it's actually in its 10th year, which is pretty cool. And the 100-day project is mostly on Instagram, but you don't have to share it or do it on Instagram, but it's committing to 100 days of any creative project. There's no rules around what the project needs to be. It could be writing, photography, flower design, right? How much fun would it be to arrange 100 bouquets? So again, it doesn't need to be anything specific, right? Anything specific. Okay, so I'm not happy with how this is going in terms of that glue stick. So let's get our matte medium out and see if we can speed this process up a little bit and see if this paper will like that a little bit better. So again, just a few pieces of paper on each one. And then I'm also interested in what happens when I get that matte medium down over the whole surface of this piece. If it's going to change the surface and make it a little smoother when I bring in some acrylic paints. And when I'm working like this, it's always important to have kind of a space set aside for drying things. So I usually lay out some newsprint on the floor and or the end of another table so that I can have space to set them all aside to dry, but get them off of my immediate workspace. So I'm definitely liking this these bits of painty newsprint, and I have a lot of that painty newsprint. And so that may be something I go find some more of for some other cards. And I was thinking this morning, because really painting in your PJs live is a lot about my visual journaling process, which so often starts for me with writing, and that I want to bring elements of my own creative practice into all of the projects I do, and to make sure that I'm nurturing myself in the way that, is meaningful and important to me. Okay, this is going so much faster with the matte medium, makes me much happier. That even here I can add some journaling. I can draw an oracle card to figure out what the animal inspiration of the day will be. I can do some writing about that animal. It's interesting, I drew the deer spirit, which is, about being gentle, and continue to bring in the parts that I love. When doing the 100-day project, it get easy to just get really obsessed with getting it done and losing the joy in the process. And I don't want to lose the joy in my own creative process. And when I first started, I said I will not be only talking about the 100-day project and my artsy animals for the next 100 days on this channel, because that might bore other people, and not everyone loves animals as much as I do. So after this week, I'll figure out where we're going to go next. I'm not quite sure. Okay, these are super cool. I'm already really happy with how these are coming along. You notice I let the bits just hang over the edges, and once they're dry, I'll trim them up. So again, it's, this is about those ways of working faster and not feeling pressured to have anything be finished now. So I'm going to come back to this one here and get that matte medium over the top. And the reason I put matte medium over the top of the collage bits is because it just seals the surface of the collage and the paper, makes it easier to paint over later. I can bring more layers of wet media over the top of the surfaces of these. It also creates a really nice flat surface for painting and drawing on. And I realize I haven't put any of this crazy textures on here. And so since I have this other texture here, let's add some more texture to this one. And I am using a paintbrush today, although I normally would use a scraper for this, but I wanted to just move faster and not maybe use as much matte medium, have that be as messy. Okay, so I'm noticing as I'm pressing it down, it's actually losing some of its texture, flattening out, which is kind of interesting. All right, let's do a couple of more of these. And I think maybe I'm just going to do a couple of fronts of the note cards and see where we can get to. And I chose postcards and note cards intentionally because I'm going to give them all away. How fun to send happy mail to people. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do that yet, but somehow on here and on Instagram, once a week, I will pick some people to send some of these to because, what am I going to do with 100 little pieces of art? And I'm not someone who likes things actually to pile up a lot. So I think it would be way more fun to share them and give them away. And so I've made it really easy for myself to be able to just tuck things in an envelope, stick a stamp on them, and off they go. I remember having pen pals in school for a little while and really enjoying writing letters, in college. I was in college long before cell phones and computers and, writing letters home, sending lots of Hallmark greeting cards. And when my grandmother passed away, my aunt had kept an envelope of all the cards and letters that I had written to my grandmother, which I still have somewhere in all my stuff. So sweet. So remember with matte medium, it's usually a good idea to put it both on your surface and on the back of your piece of collage material. So I'm noticing this is all very white. So wanting to bring in a little bit of this darker piece. And again, that magic of working fast, that magic of working fast. I'm going to see if I maybe brush that a little bit less. Maybe I can keep a little bit more of that texture in there. And there already we just have these really interesting backgrounds. And I'm especially, like I said, loving these bits of color. And this is the leftover page from yesterday where I was playing with a lot of the liquid watercolors and alcohol inks and a lot of water. Excuse me. And this page is really pretty. I can't wait to tear that one up and use it as well. All right, I'm going to do one more, and then I want to just go ahead and show you where would I go next with one of these, right? So once I have that collage background down, what would be that next step? Because, yeah, it's fun to sit here and stick the collage, but then you're probably thinking, okay, Minette, I have no idea what I should do next. So I know Blanca is going to be working on a 100-day project. She shared that yesterday. Is anyone else tempted or thinking about maybe something that they could or would be interested in committing to for 100 days of creative play? Or what are you guys working on today as you're sort of watching along here? Love to hear some other voices and know what you are all up to this morning. super happy with this one, especially. Those colors are definitely speaking to me, and I think this teal and purple combo here is really yummy as well. One more little piece on here. Speaking of Georgia, you gonna come say hello this morning? Come on. Yes, I know. Good morning. Good morning. Georgia's decided she wants to come and play. Of course. We'll see how long she lasts before she starts digging everything or getting in the way or trying to grab my paintbrush. Finishing a sacred circle. Beautiful. Thank you again for being there all weekend, Marion, for color coded emotions. Yeah, creating multiple backgrounds is so fun, and there's so many different ways to do it. Okay, so now we have a few that are painty. I'm feeling like it would be fun to do a few painty backgrounds as well. And so none of this collage paper is going to go to waste. I just will store it all in my box of collage goodies so that next time I am ready to sit down. In fact, I'm going to grab this little envelope here, sit down and do this practice all over again and do a bunch of collage backgrounds that I have. All I have to do is grab an envelope and some of these cards and I'm good to go. This is a fun one for doing sitting in front of the TV if you're working with glue stick. I wouldn't do it with matte medium because I'm very messy. And my husband might not be so appreciative if I got matte medium on our nice leather sofa. Okay, so these are super fun. I'm super happy with them, but they need to dry. So I'm going to set them aside to dry. And let's talk about how I might go after this if they were going to do some painty backgrounds. Trying to get these all in the screen. They're kind of a funny shape. Actually, I could just lift my camera up. Bear with me for just 1 second here. Okay, I'm going to lift my camera up just a little bit higher so I can see 4 of those on this screen. There we go. We'll just do them that way. So here's how I would work on a whole batch if I were going to start with just some fun painty backgrounds. So kind of like we did yesterday, but in my normal sort of visual journaling approach, I might first come in with maybe my Stabilo Marks All pencil, which is water soluble. I'm going to hold that very loosely and I'm going to just come in and make some crazy marks, right? As soon as I get something down on the page, it's kind of like my soul scribbles, right? Then there's something here to respond to. I might also decide that I wanted to come in and do some handwriting on them. So this is a plain old ballpoint pen, which is cool because it bleeds through the ink, which you'll see, which is a really fun technique. And so if I wanted to just, they call this, I think they call it asemic writing, where you make it look like handwriting, but it's not actually really words, but you kind of give it that sort of handwriting look. It's kind of a fun way to just, again, I love creating all these different ways to just get our own marks and writing onto the page. So maybe I'll do that on a couple of them. And then I could also just simply come in with a pencil, which does interesting things as well. And again, do some of that asemic writing, just pretending like I'm writing a note or words. And already I have some fun, smushy, painty, interesting backgrounds to respond to. And I'm super curious about what this watercolor paper would do if I put some gesso over the top. And what I'm seeing is that my gesso is on the other table. So bear with me for a second. Let me dash over here and grab my gesso. And I want you to see what happens with that ballpoint pen when I put the gesso over it, because it creates a really cool effect. But again, here's 4 more surfaces that I'm going to have to respond to when I'm ready for those next layers. And I'm feeling happy that I'm going into the project with a number of backgrounds created. And I'll probably have other times when I need to sort of batch create a bunch more. So this one's that stabilo. You can see it bleeding underneath there just a little bit, creating some just interesting lines. This one's the stabilo and the ballpoint pen. And we'll see what that ballpoint pen does when it bleeds through there. This watercolor paper is funny, so we'll see if it works or not. Sometimes it works great, sometimes maybe not so much. But I'm loving the way the black stabilo is coming through and creating some really interesting lines and marks. And like I said, the texture on these is really funny, so I'm hoping the gesso is maybe gonna do something about some of that texture, maybe smooth that out a little bit. But I'm curious about these lines. I'm loving how that little bit of stabilo is just popping through, and it's giving me an idea about where to go next to start to add some little bits of pops of color to these. Okay, so these are super cool. It's so funny. I'm seeing a horse in here. Where's that stabilo go? Kind of looking off into the distance, right? And like sort of looking back over his neck, already seeing an animal popping up there, and maybe there's some landscape hills off in the distance. So just noticing, right? I love playing with shape, and so that won't be the sort of final that ends up being there, but it's fun to just notice what's happening or showing up. All right, get that cleaned off. So what I'm thinking is I want to now just start adding some pops of color to these backgrounds, and I'm going to just literally grab what's on top of my bin right here. So I've got some purple, a kind of a darker, this is called fresh water, and of course my teal as always seems to be right on top. And I'm just going to add some paint to these as the next step. And this is again that great way to just get these painty backgrounds going fast and furious, right? So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to kind of use the lines that the stabilo created as just a little bit of a guide to maybe add some little bits and pops of color to each of these. So we've got some funny shapes. It kind of created some shapes in here already that I can respond to. Again, I'm working fast, I'm working abstract. I did not wait for that gesso to dry, although it is drying really quickly here. Let's see, let's try some of this fresh water. So I'm not cleaning my brush in between. It's okay if they kind of mix together. We'll get some interesting colors happening. And see how much of that texture is still showing through around the edges of this paint. Like these are so textured. And I'm feeling a little grumpy about the texture. I keep mentioning it, and I'm like, yeah, I was expecting these cards to be smooth watercolor paper, not to be quite so textured, but you know what? I bought 100 of them, so we're going with it. And it teaches me something about what I love about substrates, about what I don't like, about what I want to be different, or what I would choose differently the next time. This blue may be too much the same as that one, so I'm going to come in with some white. Get some of that purple off my brush so we get a little more pure blue in there. And what I love about doing these in sets like this is that when I do sit down to sort of work on the next stage of these, that they're going to there's going to be some nice symmetry. So I'm going to have, a set that's all going to have this same painty background or those same collage backgrounds. And I think it's going to be a fun way to sort of learn to create. And a lot of artists, like Jody Ohl is one of my favorite abstract art teachers, but they talk a lot about working in sets and batches of things like this and working across multiple surfaces at the same time, that we learn a lot from doing that. And so I encourage you to learn to sort of work in batches like this, to work on, 4 or 6 pieces at a time, and see what happens when you do that. And you just kind of go back and forth between them, go back and forth between them. So this is a very cool palette. So all of a sudden I'm thinking about polar bears and walruses and sea lions and other animals like that, Arctic animals. Ooh, the Arctic fox. A beautiful white Arctic fox would be super fun on this background of colors. But there, all of a sudden, I have 4 fun painty backgrounds ready to go. So that might be one way that I would approach creating some painty backgrounds. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We ended up with 5 collage cards. We've got 4 of these. This is 9 backgrounds already today that we've created, right? Like, how fun is that to just quickly move through things? And then I'm going to want to let these dry completely before I start coming in and having fun with whatever that next layer is going to be. You could even do 100 days of painty backgrounds. Imagine how much fun you would have if you did nothing but 100 days of painty backgrounds and got really comfortable with your own backgrounds. And Marion, for example, we talked a lot about color and our sense of color this weekend and color coded emotions, and what a great way to explore and play with our sense of color and color combinations by doing 100 days of painty backgrounds. Although I could do 100 painty backgrounds probably in a day because I love it so much. Okay, so that one was super, super fun. Let me put these out here to dry. Thankfully, there's no cats at this very second roaming around. So I want to come back to this one. Me too. It was a fun color combo. So it was, like I said, it was just kind of random. I literally reached in and picked the 3 colors that were on top of my pile of paints. Not a surprise that the 3 that were on top were ones that I love and use all the time. So I'm going to come back and maybe show you where would I go next with something like this. I'm going to go ahead and just trim those edges up where the collage is now nice and dry. And I'm pretty excited about diving into my 100 days of artsy animals. So I'm thinking it would be fun to come in here with some oil pastels, which is always, yes, I love it with a series of 12 colors. Great. And you know that having that limits in place, the elegance of limits or creative constraints, right, is a great way to really play with that, or even just using primary colors, 100 days of primary colors. So I'm going to come in with some oil pastels. It's just another way to start to add some color and texture to this page. And this is going to be interesting because we do already have this page has a lot of texture, which is super cool. In this instance, I'm like, ooh, I'm liking that texture. So I'm going to just play with this oil pastel and get some blocks of color in, just like I would on a journal page. So I think, sometimes it's important to take the principles and the practices and the steps that I love and try them out on different surfaces and substrates to see what works. And I just started a new painting of a dolphin on a wood panel. And I think that's what I'm going to show you guys tomorrow. Is we'll work together on a particular picture. Okay, so interesting colors. So I'm noticing I want some of this blue and I want to bring in some of this purple. See what we got here. So I can just repeat some of these colors that are already on here. Again, just being playful is the key here. Not getting attached. Remembering these are just the underlayers. There's, no destination here. And I can bring in some of those marks on top of some of this as well. It can be hard sometimes to let go of our collage pieces and our underbits. And so this is a great practice in letting go and working in those layers. Okay, so much fun to just get a whole bunch of crazy color on the page. That's feeling kind of white. So my next layer is I'm going to come in, I'm going to cover this whole thing up with gesso. So what I do love about these note cards, it's 140-pound watercolor paper. Let me get a little bit of glue here. That it's very thick, and so it can take a lot of beating, right? Meaning it can take a lot of layers and get really wet. Art is one of the things, Kay, that has really helped me let go of things in multiple areas of my life, surprisingly, right? The more that I practice letting go of the things that I'm attached to in my art, it definitely has translated into other areas of my life. Let go of expectations, to let go of needing to know the outcome of something, help me let go sometimes of anxiety, but mostly it just helps me to hold things more lightly. Hold things more lightly. So I'm not completely covering up everything underneath. I'm coming in with a thin layer of that gesso. But I'm mostly covering it up. And this piece has a ton of texture. It must have been there was a big glob of paint left over there. So I've got this really cool texture happening there. And I put the collage down because it adds tooth and to the page, it adds texture and interest to the page, not because I need to be able to see all the things that I put down on the page. If I'm putting down underlayers of collage that that I'm too attached to, I should save those for a higher layer. And sometimes I will if I want to see more book pages, more writing and more words, I will come back, right? I will come back and add collage in later layers as well. So again, just creating some interest, creating some texture on the page, working very fast. And I know you guys have seen me do this before, but this is when it's fun to scritch back. And I'm using just a little bamboo dip pen here. Come and just scratch through this gesso, and I can bring some of these colors back even a little bit more. And I may do that a few different times if I can kind of remember where they are. It's a fun technique that I learned. So much of this I learned from my friend Andrea Shebelou. Again, just being very playful and childlike. There's nowhere I'm trying to go yet, but what if I took that, what did I do with that tiger? All right. George is back, but the tiger is not. So I have set that tiger down somewhere. Underneath, I have way too many things piled on my desk at the moment. So if I thought I wanted to use that tiger on the page wherever he went, I might start to think about how I was going to do that, right? And I might even take my stabilo and start to maybe decide, how we're our next one, we already have it scheduled. That would be amazing. Marion would love to have you. We have it scheduled. We just haven't started promoting it yet. Is going to be in mid-October. It's the weekend of like the 11, 12, 13, whatever that weekend is. So if I know that, I'm going to have some kind of a figure, it's looking more cat-like than tiger-like. Oh, I'm going to stick a little kitty cat, a silly little kitty cat, since I have one sitting in my lap at the moment. And then this kind of becomes her back over here. And I love how things just kind of appear, right? It's like this is again that idea of working very intuitively. And our theme for our October retreat is love and magic. So we have some fun ideas brewing for that. Okay, so I'm kind of liking, we've got this cute little kitty cat that just sort of magically appeared here on the page. And I think this needs to be a little orange and purple kitty cat. So let's see what we can find in our paints. And let's just start to let him go. So again, this is just such a example of how things can just appear in our art and we don't need to know exactly the when or the what. Oops, that one's kind of dried up in there. That's going to mix with that black stabilo, which is fine. Let's get this little orange fat cat going in here. And it's always sort of fun. And yes, we do all need love and magic. Our world needs it. I think we need it. Fun to see these little critters appear. That our art doesn't always have to be perfect and intentional, and that the more that we can just be in kind of the playfulness of our own creative spirit. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint out his face for now. And I'll draw that back in a little bit later. Loving seeing again some of the texture of the collage bits are showing through, almost like a collar here. So all I did was simply respond to what was already on the page. I had an idea for maybe the tiger. Well, I couldn't find the tiger, so instead we ended up with this sweet little kitty cat just showing up on the page to come along and play for us. And so it'll be fun because when it's folded, we'll get just the front of the cat and the tail will be on the back. So again, a fun way to work. And here I have the beginnings already of one of my 100 days of artsy animals. And now I definitely need this to get really, really dry. So it feels like a good time to pause. I'm going to bring just a little bit more gesso here to the edge of this, but a good time to just pause, let him get dry. Like I could easily keep working on this guy, but what I'm noticing is that I feel like I'm pushing it. So always again, noticing when we feel like we're pushing, it's time to take a break, step away. I feel like I'm starting to rush because I can see that it's 8 o'clock and I have, another class to go get ready for, but I don't want to stop painting. I don't want to go stop painting. So it's time to just step away from the canvas. Okay, so the shape of his face is starting to come together just a little bit better there. Give him a little bit more of a playful face. And there we have our really silly, playful kitty. So what I'm thinking is that I want to come in and just do some with some Posca, some maybe drawing of some leaves and botanical elements around the background of this guy. And he's pretty stinking cute already. So lots of fun to do. So I will probably, I don't know if I'll finish him up with you guys tomorrow, but I think I really want to bring the dolphin painting along tomorrow. But this may be my very first animal for my 100 days of artsy animals. So as always, thank you guys for joining me. I'm so happy to be back with you this week, to be feeling so much more like myself every day, just a little bit better. Can't tell if he's going to be a calico kitty or a stripedy kitty, but we'll see where it's all going to get to. Thank you so much for playing with me. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs with Minette, and I will see you guys all back here tomorrow at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. Have a beautiful rest of your day.